Agnetha Fältskog was once the perfect image of 1970s pop music. A clear voice. A gentle face. Success came early. Very early. But behind the stage lights was a woman who kept withdrawing, kept getting hurt, and repeatedly disappeared from the world she had helped conquer. This story begins at the moment when music stopped being a safe place for her. Agnetha Fältskog was born in 1950 in a small town in Sweden. The place was quiet. Nothing about it suggested fame or a future on international stages. Her family lived a simple working-class life. They were not poor, but they were careful with money. What they always had was music. Music was present every day. It played during meals. It filled the house in the evenings. It was not treated as a talent or a career path. It was simply part of daily life. Her father, Ingvar Fältskog, once wanted a creative life of his own. That dream did not last. He gave it up to run a business and support the family. That decision stayed unspoken, but it shaped the atmosphere at home. Unfinished ambition existed in the background. Her mother, Birgit Margareta Johansson, was different. Quiet. Patient. She provided stability. She did not push. She observed. This balance between quiet support and unfulfilled dreams defined Agnetha's early environment. At 6 years old, Agnetha wrote her first song, TVA SMA Troll. It was simple. It was not written for an audience. It was written because she needed to express something. At that age, most children imitate. She created. In 1958, she joined the local church choir. This was her first structured musical environment. Weekly rehearsals. Clear rules. A shared purpose. She learned discipline without pressure. Singing became routine, not performance. For Agnetha, music was not entertainment. It was not a hobby. It was something she returned to automatically. When she felt overwhelmed, she played piano. When she felt alone, she wrote melodies. Music functioned as regulation. She did not seek attention. She avoided crowds. She had few close friends. Most of her time was spent alone, sitting at the piano, repeating melodies until they felt right. This pattern repeated throughout her childhood. Her personality formed early. She was introverted. Emotionally sensitive. Highly observant. She absorbed more than she expressed. Music became the place where she released what she could not say out loud. This created a strong psychological attachment. Music was not just skill. It became safety. Control. Predictability. When the external world felt uncertain, music remained stable. That attachment would later become both her strength and her vulnerability. When music supported her, she thrived. When music became tied to pressure, judgment, and exposure, the damage went deeper. The foundation was already set. Long before fame, long before success, Agnetha learned to survive by retreating inward. And music was the place she learned to hide safely. At 15, Agnetha Fältskog made a decision that separated her from most people her age. She left school. There was no long debate. Music already took up most of her time. School felt secondary. She chose to focus on what she believed she could control. To support herself, she worked at a telephone company. The job was routine. Fixed hours. Modest pay. It paid the bills and gave her independence. Every free moment outside work went into music. She wrote songs at home. She practiced piano daily. She recorded simple demos with limited equipment. She accepted small performances when possible. These were not public breakthroughs. They were repetitions. Trial and error. Building confidence through work, not attention. During this period, she was discovered by Birgit Zimmermann, a German musician and producer. He heard her sing and saw potential. He approached her with opportunities she had never had before. Studio time. A band. A possible career outside Sweden. Agnetha joined his band. This marked her first direct exposure to a professional music environment. Rehearsals followed schedules. Decisions came from producers, not performers. Music became tied to contracts, travel, and expectations. For the first time, she experienced the idea that music could be both creative and transactional. She accepted this without resistance. She trusted the process because she trusted the person guiding her. At this stage, she believed two things could exist together. She believed emotional closeness and career growth could align. She believed guidance also meant protection. These assumptions felt natural to her at the time. She lacked experience. She did not have legal advice. She did not have management focused on her long-term interests. Decisions were made quickly. Promises were taken at face value. Her reliance on Zimmerman increased. He controlled access to studios and opportunities. She followed his direction. She did not question strategy or contracts. She focused on singing and improvement. This period formed a critical pattern. Agnetha learned to place trust in authority figures who appeared supportive. She did not negotiate. She adapted. The imbalance was subtle but real. She entered an industry without safeguards. Her talent opened doors, but her lack of protection left her exposed. These early choices did not cause immediate damage. At the time, everything seemed to move forward. But this was the foundation of her first major disappointment. The structure was already unstable. It would not collapse immediately. But when it did, the fall would feel personal, not professional. Following the promises of career growth, Agnetha Fältskog left Sweden and moved to Germany. On paper, the move looked logical. Germany had a larger music market. More studios. More producers. More money. For a young singer, it seemed like the next step. Reality felt different from the first weeks. The environment was unfamiliar. The language created distance. The people she met were direct and transactional. There was little warmth. Few explanations. She was no longer treated as a young talent being developed. She was treated as a product under evaluation. Producers listened to her recordings and dismissed them quickly. Some described her voice as plain. Others said it lacked commercial edge. These judgments were not delivered with guidance. They were final statements. No clear plan followed. Studio sessions reflected this attitude. Recordings were rushed. Budgets were limited. There was no long-term vision behind the work. She sang. Engineers recorded. Then everything stopped. No feedback. No next steps. Pressure increased fast. Agnetha began to doubt herself. She practiced more but felt less confident. The gap between effort and outcome grew wider each week. What had been promised as development felt like stagnation. This was the moment she understood the difference between words and structure. Promises existed, but support did not. Opportunity had been described, but it was never built. Her relationship with Birgit Zimmerman changed. Trust weakened. Conversations became tense. Decisions were delayed. Responsibility was unclear. She realized she had followed someone else's plan without any control over it. Eventually, she ended the relationship. There was no public conflict. No announcement. She packed her belongings and returned to Sweden quietly. The move back did not feel like failure to the outside world. To her, it felt like survival. This experience left a clear lesson. There are no shortcuts in the music industry. There are no unconditional mentors. Talent alone does not protect anyone. Structure does. After Germany, Agnetha became more cautious. She spoke less. She trusted slower. She questioned offers that sounded too simple. Her personality closed in on itself. The optimism she carried as a teenager did not disappear, but it changed shape. It became guarded. Music was still her refuge, but the world around music no longer felt safe. This first collapse did not end her career. It reshaped it. From this point on, Agnetha moved forward with one core belief: if protection does not exist, distance is necessary. Agnetha Fältskog returned to Sweden with more discipline and less trust. She focused on work. She wrote. She recorded. She waited. Her demo reached Carl Gerhard Lundqvist, a well-known figure in the Swedish music industry. He listened closely. He did not ask for a band. He did not suggest changes. He chose Agnetha alone. That decision mattered. It gave her control and a clear path. In 1967, she released her debut single, Jaguar SA Car. The response was immediate. The song climbed charts across Sweden. It sold more than 800,000 copies. For a country of that size and era, the number was exceptional. Agnetha was 17 years old. Overnight, she became a national star. Radio stations played her voice daily. Newspapers printed her photo. Television shows invited her to perform. The industry moved fast, and she was expected to keep up. Her schedule filled quickly. Studio sessions during the day. Performances at night. Travel on weekends. Rest became optional. Decisions were made for efficiency, not recovery. The media built a clear image. She was presented as gentle, flawless, and emotionally safe. The perfect girl narrative followed her everywhere. Interviews focused on her appearance and tone, not her process or limits. There was no private space left. Fans recognized her in public. Journalists followed her movements. Silence became rare. Control became difficult. The pressure began to show physically. During performances, she struggled to regulate her breathing. Notes that once felt natural became unstable. Anxiety surfaced without warning. She felt it before stepping on stage. Doctors and vocal coaches identified the issue quickly. It was not damage. It was tension. She had to relearn how to breathe while singing. She took lessons focused on breath control and vocal balance. This was uncommon for someone so young and so successful. The work helped, but the cause remained. Success had arrived faster than her ability to adapt. She had talent. She had discipline. What she lacked was time. Fame demanded constant output. Her personality required space and predictability. The mismatch grew with each appearance. From the outside, everything looked perfect. Sales were strong. Crowds applauded. The industry praised her. Internally, she felt stretched and exposed. This period defined a pattern that would repeat later. Rapid success created visibility. Visibility created pressure. Pressure led to withdrawal. At 17, Agnetha learned an early truth. Achievement does not wait for readiness. And once fame accelerates, it rarely slows down on its own. Agnetha Fältskog met Björn Ulvaeus during a period when her career was already moving fast. Their connection developed through work. Rehearsals. Writing sessions. Touring schedules. Music created closeness quickly. They shared the same routine and the same pressure. They married in 1971. At the time, the marriage appeared stable. Both were successful. Both understood the demands of the industry. From the outside, it looked balanced. In 1972, Agnetha and Björn joined forces with Benny Andersson and Annie Frid-Lyngstad. Together, they formed ABBA. At first, the group was not widely known. They worked steadily. They refined their sound. They focused on precision and melody. Everything changed in 1974. ABBA won the Eurovision Song Contest with Waterloo. The victory created instant international exposure. Television broadcasts reached millions. Record labels followed immediately. Tours expanded beyond Scandinavia. What followed was a level of success few groups ever experience. ABBA released a series of global hits. Dancing Queen, Mamma Mia, and Take a Chance on Me dominated charts across Europe, North America, and Australia. Sales reached tens of millions worldwide. A key part of ABBA's sound came from the contrast between the two female voices. Agnetha's voice was clear and precise. Annie Frid's voice was deeper and warmer. Together, they created balance. This combination became the group's signature. Visually, Agnetha became the central image of ABBA. Cameras focused on her. Magazine covers featured her face. Fans identified her first. This attention was not accidental. It was part of the group's branding. The cost was time. ABBA toured constantly. Recording schedules were tight. Media obligations filled gaps between shows. Personal routines disappeared. Days were planned months in advance. Privacy no longer existed. The marriage between Agnetha and Bjorn came under strain. Work followed them everywhere. There was no separation between personal life and professional identity. Conflicts had no recovery time. Problems were postponed, not resolved. Public attention made everything heavier. Interviews framed them as a perfect couple. Any distance became visible. Any tension became news. Over time, cracks formed that could not be repaired. Emotional exhaustion replaced cooperation. Silence replaced discussion. At the peak of ABBA's global success, the foundation underneath was weakening. The group thrived professionally while personal relationships deteriorated. This period marked the highest point of Agnetha's visibility. It also marked the moment when success began to demand more than she could sustainably give. The marriage between Agnetha Fältskog and Bjorn Ulvaeus ended after years of accumulated strain. The separation was not sudden. It followed long periods of distance, fatigue, and unresolved conflict. What had once been partnership became pressure. Soon after, ABBA began to slow down. By the early 1980s, the group effectively dissolved. There was no dramatic announcement. The work simply stopped. Recording sessions ended. Touring ceased. Public reaction was not neutral. Media narratives quickly formed. Headlines pointed toward Agnetha. She was portrayed as emotionally fragile. Some outlets implied that her personal struggles caused the group's collapse. These claims were repeated often. Context was rarely included. The attention intensified her withdrawal. She developed a strong fear of crowds. Public appearances triggered anxiety. Interviews felt intrusive. She avoided events whenever possible. Depression followed, persistent and untreated for long periods. Despite this, she continued to work. In 1983, she released her first major solo album, Wrap Your Arms Around Me. The album performed well commercially. It topped charts in several European countries. Sales confirmed that her voice still attracted listeners. 2 years later, she released Eyes of a Woman. The results were similar. Solid sales. Respectful reviews. No collapse. The problem was not failure. The problem was timing. The music industry had changed. Pop music became louder and more image-driven. Visual presence mattered more than restraint. Artists were expected to reinvent themselves aggressively. Agnetha did not adapt to this shift. She did not want to project a new persona. She did not want to compete with younger acts through spectacle. Her approach remained controlled and reserved. This created distance between her and the market. While her albums sold, they no longer defined trends. Radio rotation declined. Media interest shifted elsewhere. The pressure returned. Expectations rose again. This time, she chose not to engage. She reduced appearances. She declined interviews. She avoided tours. Gradually, she stepped away from the stage entirely. There was no statement explaining her choice. No attempt to correct the narrative. Silence became her method of protection. This withdrawal was not strategic. It was necessary. She had reached a limit. For Agnetha, retreat was not a failure of ambition. It was a response to prolonged exposure without recovery. After years of constant visibility, she chose absence. The world interpreted this as disappearance. For her, it was survival. During the 1990s, Agnetha Fältskog largely disappeared from public life. This was not a pause for reinvention. It was a withdrawal. She reduced interviews to near zero. Public appearances became rare. Work no longer structured her daily life. Personal loss followed. Both of her parents died within a short period. Their deaths removed the last stable anchors from her early life. Grief was private and prolonged. She did not speak about it publicly. There were no statements. No explanations. Around the same time, her brief marriage to Thomas Lindstrom ended. The relationship did not last. It failed quietly. The separation added another layer of emotional exhaustion. Trust became harder to rebuild. The most damaging experience came later. A relationship with Gert van der Graaf, a Dutchman she had trusted, escalated into harassment and stalking. He repeatedly contacted her against her will. He appeared near her home. The situation lasted for years and required legal intervention. This episode deepened her sense of insecurity. Fear became routine. Privacy felt fragile. Her distrust of others increased. She withdrew further. Agnetha settled on the island of Eckerö, near Stockholm. The location offered distance and control. She lived quietly. Daily routines were simple. She avoided crowded places. She limited contact to a small circle. Public life remained closed off. For many years, music existed only in private. She listened. She revisited old recordings. She played piano without pressure. There was no intention to return. That changed slowly. In 2004, she released My Coloring Book. The album consisted of songs from her youth. Soft arrangements. Familiar melodies. The project was not built for charts or tours. It was personal. She did not promote it aggressively. She did not follow it with appearances. Still, the album resonated with longtime listeners. It confirmed that her voice remained intact. More importantly, it proved she could create on her own terms. Years later, another return followed. In 2021, ABBA released Voyage. The reunion surprised the industry. Agnetha participated with clear boundaries. Limited interviews. Controlled exposure. No open-ended commitments. This time, she led the conditions. She was no longer chasing relevance. She was no longer responding to demand. She returned because she chose to. Today, Agnetha lives quietly in Sweden. She avoids attention. She maintains distance from media. Music remains part of her life, but it no longer defines her identity. Her journey does not end with a comeback narrative. It ends with control. She no longer seeks visibility. She protects stability. What remains is not the image of a pop icon, but a person who learned, slowly and painfully, how to exist without being consumed by the world that once demanded everything.